The door slammed so hard that the walls shook. My heart dropped because it was not just the sound of the door, but the sound of my own son shouting at me. His words still burn in my ears. You are nothing to me anymore. You are not my mother. I stood frozen, my hands shaking, unable to believe what I was hearing. This was the same boy I carried for 9 months, the child I raised with tears and sweat, the one I gave my life to protect. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger, as if we had no blood between us. David. I whispered, my voice breaking. How can you say that? I am your mother. But he didn't flinch. His eyes were cold, filled with anger I couldn't understand. He pushed past me, grabbed his wife's hand, and left the house. The sound of their footsteps faded, but the wound in my heart grew deeper with every beat. I collapsed into the chair, tears rolling down my face. My chest hurt, not from sickness, but from betrayal. I had always feared losing my son to the world, but I never imagined I would lose him to his own anger, and to the woman he married. And that night, as I sat alone in the darkness of my living room, one thought kept echoing in my mind. How did it all come to this? The answer lay in the secrets, the choices, and the small cracks that had started years ago. Cracks that slowly grew into a wall between me and my only son. But before I take you there, before I explain how love turned to hatred, and how a mother became a stranger to her own child, you must hear the whole story. You must understand where it began, because betrayal never comes in one day. It is like a seed that grows quietly until its roots tear everything apart. It all started many years ago when David was just a little boy. David was born on a cold morning in December. The world outside was covered with frost, but in my arms he was warm, soft, and beautiful. His small fingers wrapped around mine, and I promised him then that I would protect him, no matter what. I was young, scared, and poor, but I had hope because of him. Raising David was not easy. His father, Richard, was a man who loved himself more than his family. Many nights I cried myself to sleep because of his harsh words and his absence. But every time David laughed, every time he called me Mama, I found strength again. David grew fast. By the time he was 6, he was already asking questions about why his father didn't come home often. I always tried to cover for Richard, telling David his father was working hard for us. I didn't want him to hate his father. I thought protecting him from the truth was the right thing. But lies, even small ones, have a way of turning into shadows that follow you. When David turned 12, Richard left us for good. He packed his bag one morning, said nothing, and walked out. I watched my son cry for his father, and I felt helpless. From that day, I became both father and mother. I worked 2 jobs, I cooked, I cleaned, I carried burdens that should not have been mine alone. But I did it for David. As he grew into a teenager, David started to change. He was handsome, intelligent, and kind, but he was also hungry for approval. He wanted to be seen, to be respected, to be loved by someone outside the walls of our home. I thought that was normal. I thought that was just part of growing up. I didn't know then that this hunger would one day turn him against me. The first time David introduced me to Angela, I saw the spark in his eyes. She was beautiful, smart, and polite, but there was something in her smile that I couldn't trust. Still, I kept my worries to myself. After all, every mother fears losing her son to another woman, but I told myself if she makes him happy, then I will accept her. At first, things seemed fine. Angela visited often, helping me in the kitchen, laughing with David, acting like a daughter. But soon little cracks appeared. She would roll her eyes when I spoke. She would whisper things to David when she thought I wasn't looking. And sometimes I would hear them arguing in low tones about me. One night, I overheard Angela saying, "Your mother is controlling. If you want to build a future with me, you have to cut her off." Those words pierced my heart. I wanted to believe David would defend me, that he would stand by me. But his silence that night said more than any words could. From then on, things began to change. David became distant. He stopped telling me things. He stopped asking for my advice. Slowly, the boy who once ran into my arms became a man who looked at me with suspicion. But nothing prepared me for the day everything finally broke. It was David's wedding day. A day I had prayed for. A day I thought would bring joy. I wore my best dress, held my head high, and told myself that no matter what, I would smile for him. But in the middle of the reception, I heard Angela's mother say something that froze my blood. She whispered to another guest, "Now that David is married, he belongs to us. His mother should learn to step aside." I felt my knees weaken. I realized then that I was losing my son, not to love, but to a war I never asked for. And that was only the beginning. Because just months after that wedding, a fight would erupt in my home that would shatter everything. It was the day David looked me in the eye and said those words I never thought I'd hear. "You are not my mother." And what happened after that fight changed everything forever. After that fight, my house became empty. Not because the furniture was gone, but because the warmth was gone. A house without love is colder than winter. I sat alone most nights, staring at the door, waiting for David to return. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months. First, I thought he needed time. I told myself, he is newly married, he is busy, he will come around. But the truth became clear when I saw him on the street one Sunday afternoon. I had just come out of church when I spotted him across the road with Angela. My heart leaped with joy. I ran towards him, waving my hand. "David," I called. But when he turned and saw me, his face tightened. He didn't smile, he didn't wave. Instead, he whispered something to Angela, and the two of them crossed the street quickly, walking away from me. "David," I called again, louder this time, but he never looked back. I stopped in the middle of the road, tears welling up in my eyes. People stared, but I didn't care. My own son had treated me like a stranger in public. That was when the pain cut deeper than before. Have you ever felt invisible to the person you love most? That day I did. And I tell you, nothing hurts more. I tried calling him afterward. Sometimes he picked up, sometimes he didn't. When he did, his words were sharp, almost as if my voice irritated him. "Why are you calling, Mother?"
I'm Busse.
"Stop disturbing me." Those words, "stop disturbing me," burned inside me. For years, I had disturbed my sleep to care for him. I had disturbed my body, working myself sick to put food on the table. I had disturbed my own happiness to make him smile. And now my son thought I was disturbing his life. Still, I refused to give up. That's the thing about mothers, we hope, even when the truth is clear. One day, I decided to visit him at his new house. I baked his favorite meat pie and wrapped it in a clean white cloth. As I walked the long distance, I remembered the little boy who used to hug me whenever I brought him food at school. My heart told me that once he tasted my food again, he would remember the love we shared. But when I knocked on his door, it wasn't David who opened, it was Angela. She looked at the tray in my hand, then at me, and her lips curved into a smile that wasn't really a smile. "Oh, you're here," she said flatly. "David is resting. He doesn't need visitors." "I'm not a visitor," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm his mother." Her eyes grew sharp and she stepped outside, closing the door halfway behind her so I couldn't see in. "Listen, ma'am," she said. "David is a grown man now. He has a wife. He doesn't need his mother breathing down his neck all the time. If you really love him, let him live his life." Her words stung like a slap. I wanted to argue, to scream, but my voice betrayed me. "Please," I whispered. "Just let me see him." Angela's smile returned, but it was colder this time. "Not today. And don't come here unannounced again. David doesn't like it." With that, she shut the door in my face. I stood there, the meat pie still warm in my hand, but my heart felt cold. I turned back slowly and walked home, tears streaming down my cheeks. Each step felt heavier than the last. That night, I couldn't eat. I stared at the meat pie on the table until it went stale. I realized then that Angela was not just a wife. She was a wall between me and my son. And David had chosen to stand behind that wall. Days passed, and my health began to suffer. The stress of rejection, the endless crying, the loneliness, it all weighed on me. My friends at church noticed, and one of them, Mrs. Green, pulled me aside one Sunday. "You can't keep carrying this pain alone," she said gently. "You need to let David go and live your life." But how could I let go of my own child? How could I live a life without him? A mother's heart does not know how to stop loving, even when love is thrown back at her. Still, I tried to distract myself. I joined the women's fellowship. I took walks in the park. I even started planting flowers in my little garden. For a while, it helped. The bright colors of the flowers reminded me that life still had beauty, even if my son wasn't part of it. But just when I thought things were getting better, a storm came. It was a Friday evening when I heard a loud knock on my door. Startled, I rushed to open it, and there stood David. My heart jumped with joy. "David!" I cried, reaching to hug him. But his expression stopped me. His face was hard, his jaw tight, his eyes full of fire. "We need to talk," he said coldly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door and followed him, my hands trembling. "What is it, my son?" I asked, praying he had finally come to reconcile. But what he said next cut through me like a knife. "You have to stop poisoning my marriage. Angela told me everything." I froze, my mouth hanging open. "Poisoning your marriage? What are you saying?" "She said you've been speaking against her, trying to turn me away from her, making her feel unwelcome. If you don't stop, I swear, I'll cut you off for good." I gasped. "David, I would never." But before I could finish, his voice rose like thunder. "Don't lie to me, Mother. You're jealous because I have a wife now. You want to control me forever, but I won't let you." His words struck me harder than any blow could. I reached out to touch his arm, to calm him, but he pulled away. In that moment, I realized something terrible. Angela had poisoned his heart against me, and my son believed her more than he believed me. I felt my knees weaken, and I fell onto the chair behind me. My hands shook as I whispered, "David, I am your mother. Why would you believe her lies over my love?" He glared at me, his chest rising and falling with anger. Then, he said the words that ended the night like a blade slicing through my soul. "You are nothing to me anymore." And with that, he stormed out, leaving me trembling, broken, and gasping for breath. But what happened the very next morning was even worse. The morning after David told me I was nothing to him, I woke up with swollen eyes. My pillow was wet from tears I didn't even remember crying. My body felt weak, as though all my strength had left me in the night. I tried to convince myself it was just anger talking, that maybe by the next day David would regret what he said. But when I looked at my phone, there was no call, no message. Silence. I walked into the kitchen to make tea, but before I could even sip it, I heard loud banging at my door. My heart jumped. Was it David coming back? Was he ready to say sorry? I rushed to the door, hope shining in my chest. But when I opened it, my smile faded. It wasn't David. It was Angela. She stood there in a bright red dress, her face painted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her arms were folded, and behind her stood two of her friends, looking at me like I was dirt under their shoes. "Good morning," I said nervously. "Is David here?" Angela chuckled. "David? He's at work. I came on my own. We need to talk, woman to woman." I swallowed hard. "Come in." She walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the floor. Her friends followed, whispering and laughing. I felt my stomach twist. Angela sat on my couch, crossed her legs, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Let's make something clear," she said. "David is my husband now. My family is his family. You are just the past." My mouth dropped open. "The past? I am his mother." Her smile sharpened. "A mother who doesn't know her place. David told me everything about you. You cling to him, you meddle in his life, you want to control him like a little boy. But those days are over." Her words stung like fire. I tried to defend myself, my voice shaking. "I raised him alone. I gave him everything I had. Why are you turning him against me?" Angela leaned closer, her voice low and sharp. "Because you don't belong in his future. If you really love David, step aside. Leave us alone. Otherwise..." She paused and glanced at her friends, who smirked. "Otherwise, you'll regret it." I gasped. "Are you threatening me in my own house?" Angela stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she looked back at me and whispered, "This is your last warning." The door slammed behind her, and I stood frozen, my hands trembling. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed her words again and again. "You'll regret it." Was she planning something? Was David part of it? I didn't know. But I felt danger coming, like a storm hiding behind the clouds. The next few weeks were quiet, almost too quiet. David didn't visit, didn't call. Angela didn't show up again. For a while I thought maybe it was over, that maybe things would calm down. I tried to move on with my life. I spent more time in church, I helped neighbors with their children. I even found comfort in reading old letters David had written to me as a boy. Those letters reminded me of the son I once knew, the one who loved me without question. But just when I started to breathe again, another blow came. One Saturday afternoon, I went to the market to buy vegetables. As I walked past a group of women selling tomatoes, I overheard two young ladies talking. "Did you hear what Angela said?" one whispered. "Yes," the other replied. "She said David's mother is a witch, that she tried to curse their marriage." My heart nearly stopped. A witch? Me? I clutched the bag in my hand and staggered back, my ears ringing. The women noticed me staring and quickly turned away, whispering even more. Shame burned my face. People in the market were looking at me differently now, their eyes filled with suspicion. I couldn't believe it. Angela had gone beyond trying to separate me from my son. She was trying to destroy my name, my reputation, my dignity. I hurried home, locked my door, and cried until my body shook. My chest ached so badly I thought I might not survive the night. But something inside me also hardened. If Angela wanted war, I would not sit back and let her ruin me. I was a mother, but I was also a fighter. I had survived betrayal from my husband, loneliness, poverty. This too I would face. And just when I thought I had gathered enough courage to confront David about these lies, another knock came at my door. This time it was not Angela. It was the police. And the words that came out of the officer's mouth made my blood run cold. "Madam," he said, "you are under investigation for poisoning your son's wife." "Poison?" I gasped, my hands trembling. "Officer, you must be mistaken. I would never harm Angela. She is my son's wife." But the officer only stared at me with cold eyes. "We received a report. Her family says you've been jealous, and now she's fallen sick. They claim you poisoned her." The room spun around me. My knees weakened, and I held on to the doorframe to stop myself from falling. I wanted to scream, to shout, but the words stuck in my throat. "Please," I whispered. "This is a lie. I am innocent." The officer sighed. "You need to come with us for questioning. If you refuse, we will have no choice but to arrest you." Neighbors had already gathered outside, their whispers cutting through me like knives. I saw Mrs. Green, my church friend, shake her head sadly. Children pointed, women covered their mouths, and men muttered under their breath. "Maybe it's true," I heard someone say. "Maybe she really is a witch." Shame burned my face as I followed the officer into the police car. I felt like the whole world had turned against me. At the station, they made me sit in a small room with peeling paint and a buzzing light bulb. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it echoing in my ears. After a few minutes, the door opened, and to my shock, it was David. "David!" I cried, rushing to him. "Please tell them this isn't true. You know I would never poison your wife." But his face was hard, just like that night in my house. He didn't move to hug me. He didn't even look me in the eye. "Mother," he said coldly, "Angela is sick. She's been vomiting, weak, and the doctors don't know what's wrong. But she told me everything. She said you've been jealous since we got married. She said you threatened her." "No." I cried, shaking my head. "That's not true. She came to my house with her friends and threatened me instead. She's the one lying, David. Please believe me." But David's eyes filled with anger. "Stop lying. You want me to hate my wife, but it won't work. If anything happens to Angela, I swear, I'll never forgive you." The officer cleared his throat. "We will run tests on Angela. If poison is found, madam, you will face the law." I buried my face in my hands and wept. Not because I feared prison, but because the boy I raised, the child who once kissed my forehead and promised never to leave me, now looked at me like I was his enemy. Hours passed. Finally, they let me go home, warning me not to leave town. I walked back through the streets, my head bowed, my body heavy with shame. People stared as I passed. Some even crossed the road to avoid me, as though I carried a curse. At home, I locked the door and fell on my knees. "God," I prayed through my tears, "why is this happening to me? What sin did I commit to deserve this? Have mercy on me. Open my son's eyes. Don't let the lies of the enemy destroy us." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, clutching my Bible, rocking back and forth. Every sound outside made me jump. Every knock on the wall felt like judgment coming closer. But by morning, something inside me hardened. If Angela wanted to destroy me, she would not succeed. If my son had turned against me, I would not stop fighting for him. I was his mother, and the truth would come out. I decided to confront Angela directly. The next day, I went to their house. My legs shook with every step, but I forced myself forward. When I knocked, Angela opened the door looking pale and weak, but her eyes still burned with pride. "Well, well," she said softly. "The witch comes to visit." My anger boiled. "Enough, Angela. You have turned my son against me, but I will not let you destroy my name. I did not poison you, and you know it." Angela smiled faintly. "Then prove it. Because right now everyone believes me." Before I could answer, David appeared behind her. His arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. His face was cold again. "Mother, leave," he said firmly. "You're not welcome here anymore." My heart cracked. "David, please. Leave," he repeated louder this time. And then he slammed the door in my face. I stood there, my body trembling, my tears falling onto the dust at my feet. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. Through the window, I saw Angela smiling, not the weak smile of a sick woman, but a sly, satisfied smile. And in her hand, hidden from David, was a small brown bottle. I froze by the window, my eyes locked on the small brown bottle in Angela's hand. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't sick. She was pretending. She was playing a game, a cruel game, and my son was trapped in it. For a moment, anger surged through me. I wanted to burst back into the house, to snatch that bottle and show David the truth. But my legs wouldn't move. My voice stayed locked in my chest. Because deep down I knew, even if I shouted the truth, David would not believe me. He was already blinded by love, poisoned not by medicine, but by Angela's lies. I turned away, my tears falling onto the dust as I walked home. My heart was screaming inside me, but my mouth stayed silent. That night, I could not rest. I sat by my window, staring at the moon, asking myself over and over, why can't my son see? Why does he believe her lies more than my love? I remembered when David was a boy. He used to sit by this same window, his little legs dangling, asking me questions about the stars. "Mama," he once asked, "how do stars shine so bright?" I smiled at him and said, "Because even in the darkest sky, the stars refuse to give up." But now, the same boy who once believed in stars had turned into a man who couldn't see through the darkness right in front of him. The days that followed were torture. People whispered about me in the market. Some refused to sell me food. At church, I noticed the way some members avoided sitting beside me. Angela's lies were spreading like wildfire, and no one seemed to doubt her story. I thought I could bear it, until one Sunday afternoon when I returned from service and found something terrifying on my doorstep. It was a small wooden box, tied with black string. My hands shook as I bent to pick it up. Inside was a dead bird, its feathers stained red, and a note written in bold letters. "Stay away from David or else." My knees buckled, and the box slipped from my hands. The sight was too much. Who could do this? Angela? Her family? Or someone she had sent to scare me? I stumbled inside and locked the door, my chest rising and falling with fear. For the first time, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was afraid for my life. But then, a fire lit inside me. If they wanted me to be silent, I would not. If they wanted to scare me into hiding, I would stand taller. I was a mother, not a coward. I decided to confide in Mrs. Green, my closest friend at church. That evening, I carried the box to her house. When she saw it, she gasped and covered her mouth. "This is evil," she whispered. "They want to break you. But don't give in. The truth always comes out, no matter how long it takes." Her words gave me strength. I left her house that night determined to protect myself, no matter the cost. But the battle was far from over. 3 nights later, just as I was beginning to gather courage, a loud knock shook my door again. I rushed to open it, and what I saw froze me in place. It was David, his eyes red, his face twisted with fury. And behind him stood Angela, holding her stomach and pretending to groan in pain. "Mother!" David shouted, his voice echoing in the night. "What have you done this time?" I stepped back, confused. "What do you mean?" "Angela is worse," he roared. "She says you cursed her, and now she's bleeding. If she loses this baby, I swear, I will never forgive you." "Baby," I whispered, my heart thundering. "She's pregnant." Angela leaned against him, her lips curling into a faint smile only I could see. "Yes," she whispered dramatically. "And your mother wants to kill it." My breath caught in my chest. The world spun around me. My son was looking at me like I was a murderer, when all along, the real enemy was standing right beside him. And before I could speak, David raised his hand and pointed at me. "If anything happens to Angela or this child," he growled, "you will pay for it with your life." The night David threatened me, I stood frozen in my doorway, staring at the sun I no longer recognized. His words pierced through my heart like sharp knives. "If anything happens to Angela or this child, you will pay with your life." My lips trembled, my voice shaking as I whispered, "David, I am your mother. Why would I harm your wife or your child? That baby is my grandchild. I should be rejoicing, not weeping. Why can't you see she is twisting everything?" But David's eyes were hard. He pulled Angela closer, his arm wrapped around her protectively. Angela leaned into him, pretending to be weak, but her eyes met mine, and in them I saw triumph. She was winning. Without another word, David turned and guided her back into the night, leaving me standing in the silence of my home. The door shut behind them, but the echo of his voice still rang in my ears. For the first time, I wondered if I had truly lost him forever. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, my mind racing. Was Angela really pregnant? Or was this another one of her tricks? The small brown bottle I had seen in her hand still haunted me. Something was wrong. But how could I prove it? The days that followed were heavy. I kept to myself, afraid of people's eyes, afraid of the whispers that followed me everywhere. In the market, women turned their backs. At church, some avoided shaking my hand. Angela's lies were growing stronger, painting me as a monster. But one morning, as I watered the flowers in my small garden, Mrs. Green came rushing into my compound, her face pale. "Have you heard?" she asked, panting. "Heard what?" I said nervously. "Angela collapsed yesterday. They rushed her to the hospital. People are saying she nearly lost the baby." My heart skipped. I dropped the watering can, my hands trembling. "No, I whispered. This cannot be happening." Mrs. Green nodded gravely. "And the worst part, they are blaming you again. They say your curses are working." I clutched my chest, struggling to breathe. How could lies spread so quickly? How could everyone believe them so easily? That evening, I forced myself to go to the hospital. My feet felt heavy with every step, but I knew I had to see my son. I had to prove to him that I cared. When I arrived, I saw David sitting in the waiting area, his head in his hands. For a moment, I saw my little boy again, the same boy who used to rest his head on my lap when he was tired. My heart softened. "David," I whispered, touching his shoulder gently. He looked up, his eyes red, but instead of comfort there was anger. He stood abruptly, pushing my hand away. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. "Haven't you done enough?" Tears filled my eyes. "I came because I care. I am your mother. I love you. I want to be here for you and for the baby." David shook his head. "No. If you loved me, you would have accepted Angela. You would stop this jealousy. But instead, you want to destroy my happiness. You are the reason she almost lost our child." "David, please." But before I could finish, a nurse appeared at the door. "Mr. David," she said, "your wife is asking for you." David shot me one last angry look before rushing inside. I stood in the corridor, my legs weak, my heart pounding. And then through the small gap in the door, I saw Angela lying on the hospital bed. Her face looked pale and weak for David, but when his back was turned, her lips curved into a secret smile. And that's when I noticed it again. Slipped beneath her pillow was that same small brown bottle. My breath caught. Angela wasn't sick. She wasn't poisoned. She was acting. She was using that bottle to keep David tied to her with fear. But the question burned in my mind. What was inside that bottle? Before I could think further, the nurse suddenly walked out and spotted me. Her eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't be here," she said coldly. "Your presence is upsetting the patient. Please leave." I wanted to argue, but the shame was too heavy. I turned and walked out of the hospital, my tears blinding me. That night, I prayed harder than I had ever prayed before. "God," I cried, "open my son's eyes. Do not let lies destroy our family. If Angela has secrets, let them be revealed." But as I prayed, I felt something deep in my spirit. A warning. A storm was coming, and I didn't have to wait long to see it. 2 days later, just as I was preparing food in my kitchen, there was another furious knock on my door. When I opened it, I froze. This time it wasn't David. It was Angela's mother, her face twisted with rage, her voice like thunder. "You wicked woman," she shouted. "What kind of mother are you? You want to kill my daughter and my grandchild? Today, we will deal with you once and for all." Behind her stood 3 men I had never seen before, their arms crossed, their eyes full of anger. And before I could react, they pushed their way into my house. The moment Angela's mother and those 3 men stormed into my home, I felt my heart leap into my throat. My little house had never felt so small, so unsafe. The men spread out like wolves circling their prey, their heavy footsteps thudding against my floor. Angela's mother pointed her finger at me, her eyes blazing. "You evil woman. You want to destroy my daughter's marriage, but I will not let you. If anything happens to Angela or her child, I will make sure you pay with blood." Her words echoed against the walls. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, my voice caught in my chest. "Please," I whispered, my knees weak. "I have done nothing. I love my son. I love the child. Why would I harm them?" But she didn't listen. One of the men stepped forward, slamming his fist against my table so hard that the plates rattled. "Confess," he shouted. "What did you do to Angela? What charm did you use?" "I did nothing," I cried, clutching my chest. Another man grabbed the small cross that hung on my wall and threw it to the ground. "Liar," he spat. For a moment, fear consumed me. My body shook from head to toe, and I thought they might truly harm me. But then something rose inside me, a quiet strength I didn't know I still had. I lifted my head and met Angela's mother's gaze. "You are fighting the wrong battle," I said softly but firmly. "Your daughter is not the victim. She is the one weaving lies. One day, you will see the truth." For a second, silence filled the room. Angela's mother's face twisted in rage. She raised her hand, as if to strike me. My heart pounded. Then suddenly, the door burst open. It was Mrs. Green. She had come looking for me, and when she saw the scene, she cried out, "What is this madness? Have you no fear of God, barging into a woman's house like this?" The men stepped back, muttering angrily. Angela's mother glared at me one last time and hissed, "This is not over." Then she stormed out with the men, slamming the door so hard that the walls shook. The moment they left, my knees gave way. I sank to the floor, trembling. Mrs. Green rushed to me, holding me in her arms. "Be strong," she whispered. "They are trying to break you. But remember, darkness cannot hide forever." Her words gave me comfort, but deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The days that followed were filled with unease. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Every whisper in the market felt like it was about me. My world, once full of joy and love, had become a prison of fear and suspicion. But I held on to prayer. I held on to faith. Then one afternoon, as I was returning from the well with a bucket of water balanced on my head, I saw something that made my heart stop. Across the street, hidden in the shadows, stood one of the men who had entered my house. He was watching me, watching every step I took. When our eyes met, he smirked, then slowly walked away. My body went cold. Why was he watching me? What did they plan to do? That night, I barely slept. My ears picked up every sound. The creak of the roof, the rustle of the trees, the bark of distant dogs. My heart refused to rest. And just as the first light of dawn began to creep across the sky, I heard it. Footsteps outside my window. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I held my breath, my hands clutching the blanket tightly. The footsteps grew louder, circling my house. Then suddenly bang! The sound of glass shattering filled the air. I screamed, jumping from my bed. Someone had thrown a stone through my window. The shards lay scattered across the floor, glittering in the pale morning light. And tied to the stone was a note. With shaking hands, I picked it up and read the words written in bold, angry letters. "Leave this village or you will not live to see that child born." My legs went weak. My hands trembled. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore. They wanted me gone. I stood in my small living room, the broken glass crunching under my feet as I clutched the threatening note in my hand. My heart raced, my body trembled. But somewhere inside me, a quiet voice whispered, "Do not run. Do not be afraid. Truth will fight for itself." I knew this had gone too far. If I stayed silent, Angela's lies would destroy me. If I ran, it would only prove I was guilty. I had to confront everything, no matter the cost. The next morning, I went to the church. The pastor, a kind man who had watched David grow since childhood, listened as I told him everything. Angela's lies, the strange brown bottle, her fainting spells that seemed like acting, the men who had threatened me. The pastor's eyes grew heavy. "If what you are saying is true," he said, "then the Lord will bring it to light. Lies do not last forever." That Sunday, I sat at the back of the church, my head bowed in shame. David and Angela walked in together, Angela looking weak and pitiful as if she had just risen from her sickbed. People whispered, casting suspicious glances at me. Then the pastor stood before the congregation. His voice was firm. "We must not let gossip destroy our community. If there are accusations, let them be tested with truth." Today, I ask Angela and David to come forward. Gasps filled the air. Angela looked startled, her eyes darting nervously. David held her hand, but confusion flickered across his face. "Angela," the pastor said gently but firmly, "do you swear before God and this church that your mother-in-law tried to harm you and your child?" Angela's lips parted, but before she could speak, the pastor raised his hand. "Wait. Before you answer, the Lord has revealed something." He turned to the congregation. "Yesterday, while I was praying, a woman from the hospital came to me. She said she had seen Angela many times hiding a bottle under her pillow. She feared speaking out but could no longer stay silent." A loud murmur filled the room. All eyes turned to Angela. David's grip on her hand loosened. "Bring the bottle," the pastor commanded. A nurse who had been secretly watching from the back came forward, holding the small brown bottle. She placed it on the altar. The pastor lifted it high. "This is no medicine for pregnancy," he declared. "This is a mixture that makes a woman sick and weak for a short time, so she can pretend to be dying. Angela has been poisoning herself little by little to trap David with fear, and to destroy the name of her husband's mother." The church erupted in shock. People gasped, some covered their mouths, others shook their heads in disbelief. Angela fell to her knees, her face pale. "No. It's not true," she cried. But the evidence was too clear. David staggered back, his face drained of color. He looked at me for the first time, not with anger, but with shame. His lips trembled. "Mother, what have I done?" My tears flowed freely, but they were not tears of pain anymore. They were tears of release. Angela was led away in disgrace, her lies finally exposed. The truth had fought for itself, just as the pastor had said. David fell at my feet, weeping like a child. "Forgive me, Mother. I let love blind me. I turned my back on the woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me." I placed my trembling hands on his head and whispered, "I forgive you, my son. But remember this. Love built on lies cannot stand. Always seek the truth, no matter how sweet the lie may sound." From that day, the whispers stopped. The market women greeted me again. The church welcomed me back. My name, once dragged in the mud, was restored. But my heart carried a scar, not of defeat, but of wisdom. Life taught me a lesson I will never forget. Sometimes, the people you love most can become strangers through betrayal, but forgiveness and truth have the power to bring light into the darkest places. And though my journey through betrayal was bitter, it left me stronger. Because no matter how deep the lies, truth always rises. like the sun after the darkest night.